guys, welcome back to the Pro Physique Code. I'm with Evan and Lexie today. And before we get too far, guys, we're going to talk about Command the Stage. I keep remembering at the end, and I'm talking about it today. So late in February in Tampa, all the information is on our events page if you go to prophysique.com events. But it's basically a 2.5 day all-inclusive seminar event on competing for women. Okay, it's only for women. Obviously, the bulk is going to be around the bikini division, but we do have figure and wellness come. But the goal is to educate you guys, to provide you with everything that you can imagine, from hair, makeup, tan, the science of training, the expertise of posing. What am I missing, guys?
I mean, just the kind of camaraderie and that culture. I think that was really big last year. I think that there's no way around the fact that this sport at sometimes can feel a little isolating. And so being around a lot of like-minded people who are also in this sport, I think that's a perk too.
And this is definitely not limited to Pro Physique. I think last year what I was so excited about that it was like 50-50. It was like people that were a part of Pro Physique and people that were just coming to learn. So you're going to get experts like Dr. Brett Contreras, along with a lot of the coaches for Pro Physique, myself, Evan, Lexie, Stephen Beaugrand. And then you're also just going to get some great people that come. You know, Daraj is going to be there this year. Ariana Brothers is coming, and we'll have an IFBB pro judge. We'll do like a little mock show. We do some, we plan a lot around, like Lexie said, around the camaraderie of the sport, around spending some time together, getting to know each other. We have some events, some bowling, some dinners. Some people will be in prep, some people won't, but it's basically a whole weekend around specifically the sport. And we want to make sure that everybody gets whatever they need out of it. So we're accepting partial payments right now to book it. We do limit the seats. I think we're more than 30% sold out right now. And as soon as New Year hits, it's when everybody buys them. So if you're interested in coming, book your spot. Yeah, we'll see you in Tampa. And then let's talk about today's video.
Yeah, cool. Well, we are doing a Q&A today. I feel like it's been a little bit of time since we did our last Q&A, and I think that people always enjoy these Q&As. So do you guys have some good questions?
Yeah,
I got quite a few
good ones.
Yeah, good ones. Yeah, I think that's why I like doing the Q&As, because I feel like, and maybe there'll be some crossover between our questions, but I feel like it allows us to get some insight into what people are thinking about at this time. Whereas like we may be going one direction, but all the competitors are thinking about something else.
I 100% agree. And some of these topics we may even be able to turn into a full-on episode if they're big enough. So I like that it gives us ideas too. But Evan, you said you had a good amount of them. Do you want to start?
Yeah, there's a bunch of good ones actually, and a bunch of them I was actually looking at and made me think too. I was like, wow, that's a good question. And in some of these I haven't personally experienced, but I'm sure some of you guys have. So I thought it would be good just kind of all the way around with it. So here's one I got that I personally struggle with too, in an off season, and it's how to make food volume lower during a growth phase, but also easy for digestion. So obviously when we're eating more in a growth phase, it can get hard to get the food in, especially if it's clean food, right? So what kind of tips or tricks do you guys have for that? Or are there any?
So
I think it's a very...
Go ahead, Lexie. Go ahead, Paul. I want to hear your perspective, Lexie, because as a guy, I think men will struggle with this more than women, but I want to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think that it's for females in particular. I think it's more of a mental hurdle, because I'll have a lot of girls that struggle to let go of some of those prep foods or volume meals that they were eating in the depths of prep, and they'll continue to eat those as their macros go up. And eating large salads for every meal, eating all the rice cakes in the world, when your macros are going up, it's going to be very taxing on the digestion. So I think for females in particular, some people may not want to admit it, but it's more of that mental hurdle than anything, letting go of some of those foods. But I do have a handful of girls that, their macros get really damn high in their improvement season. And, I always recommend, we have a list of carb sources that I'll kind of throw out there and recommend if they're really struggling, honey, jam, even drinking intra carbs, that can be really helpful for females if they are really struggling to hit their higher calorie amount. I think a lot of people demonize liquid calories because their mind automatically goes to like soda and like all that, sugary crap. And that's not what we're talking about, but more so like Gatorade, incorporating that during workouts, that can be really helpful as well. But definitely not something I feel like females struggle with as much as males. So I'm interested to hear what your guys' perspective is.
I think there's two problems. You adapt, like you said, you adapt your diet to a certain approach. And just because prep ends doesn't mean your behavior changes. You don't go to the store and automatically just start going down different aisles. So I'm still buying the same kind of high volume foods that keep me satiated. The other thing is when the hunger signal goes away, my desire to eat gets very low. It's probably, partially genetic. I'm just not meant to be like a heavier, bigger guy. So like, I really have to force myself to hit that third, sometimes fourth or fifth meal when I'm trying to grow. Especially now, I keep finding I keep dropping back down in weight, and I have to remind myself to eat that fourth meal every night, even when I don't want to. So this is when I will start to include things that I really look forward to eating, fattier meats. Like instead of getting the super lean ground beef, I've been buying the 80/20. I tell you what, it tastes a lot better. You just forget about it because it's, in prep, you're trying to hit those 40, 50 grams of fat. But when you get it up to 80, 90, you can actually change your food sources. And as everyone knows, I'm a big believer in sugar. And I think sugar is obviously demonized for a lot of reasons, but it's got a lot of value when you're trying to get in a lot of carbohydrates and keep your fats in a nice range. I'll use kids cereal, I'll use Pop-Tarts, I'll use things like honey on your bagel. Also just getting rid of the food sources that are low carb because you were in prep. So yeah, that's for me, it's about really making foods palatable and enjoyable because I don't have the hunger.
Yeah, I think denser calorie choices are always helpful. Are y'all getting feedback, or is it just me right now?
Yeah, let me put my volume lower maybe on my speakers.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's much better. So there's a few things, and I've really struggled with this in the past too, especially when my food gets quite high. Kind of stuff you said, Lexie, things like that I don't think are really the most optimal choices, like fruit juices, things like that, can still be incredibly beneficial, especially post-workout, right? And I'm also going to take into account that everyone is training hard enough, because a lot of times if you aren't training hard enough, the food or the hunger signals are not going to be there. I personally have been pretty much under the weather for the last 2 weeks, and I haven't trained near as much as I'm used to, and my hunger is just in the gutter with that. Right. I think keeping a little bit of cardio in an off season is helpful for that. Even 20 to 25 minutes. I get up sometimes and fast in the morning, and even days I don't train, I'll do it, and now get my hunger signals going. I think one of the issues too is just food quality in the country is not the best, and it's harder to digest for a lot of people. Chicken, while it used to be a phenomenal food source, is not necessarily the best food source out there anymore, but we all still eat it. The more I eat it, the more I find I have a hard time digesting it. So I think switching up your food sources can be helpful with it, and picking foods that you digest well are good. And then also too, we all prescribe, most of us at least, prescribe free meals to some degree with it, and untracked meals. And a lot of times if we kind of take that a little bit too far, our digestion cannot be really good the next day. And we constantly feel like we're trying to play catch up again to that. So that's just a few of the things that I know I've run into personally. I know clients have run into personally, and it's still something that I struggle with on a daily basis. I would much rather diet than eating a constant surplus.
I think another thing to point out too is making sure that you're not making sure you're not stalling that first meal too late in the day, because I find that that's not helpful at all. So if you're somebody that wakes up and you're not eating until 11 or noon, and you have a lot of calories to get in the first place, that's just going to set you behind, and that is going to make you more susceptible to struggling with like digestion, because you're trying to fit in so much food in a shortened time frame.
Yeah, and I mean, I've come across this as well with clients that I think they struggle with the mental block of eating more. I'll add 15 carbs and they'll be like, Coach, but I'm so worried about adding. And I'm like, you're worried about adding 60 calories. We've got a bigger problem than, going from 100 to 115 grams of carbs should not stress you out. And I'll have to give them examples of, here is so-and-so eating 300 carbs and 70 fat a day. And they're like, really? I could never. And I'm like, yes, you could. but the mental block is there for some people. So I find that to be more true with females, which is the primary, focus for me as competitors. This is why we have, Danica to help out with the, the mental side of the sport. But, sometimes you do have to get over those hurdles. I think the idea that more food is fattening or bad for you, or somehow you have to burn it off, we have to kind of reframe that and change it to, okay, the scale needs to go up for us to add muscle. We need to get stronger. Therefore, we need more fuel. And that can be a battle because, some people have dealt with that for a long time.
Yeah. Yep. Good question. What about you, Paul? You want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I got a whole bunch. Do you believe the effort and time can turn anyone pro, or is it just not going to happen for some people? It is definitely just not going to happen for some people. I'd love to give you hopes and dreams, but turning pro, although easier than ever, there was 150 pro cards given out this year alone in the bikini division, whereas when I started in the sport, I think there was maybe 10 to 12 pro cards given out the whole year for women. It was like figure overalls at the national shows. Like, it was hardly any. Now it's, there's a lot more, but there's also a lot more people competing in the sport. The talent is a lot deeper. People are finding the sport at a younger age. So yeah, listen, there's just some genetic traits that are going to make it nearly impossible. If you have no muscle, if you have really wide, waistline, really narrow clavicles, whatever the combination of factors may be. Yes, I don't believe anyone can turn pro with time.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that. I think that we all wish we could sit here and say it was the opposite, but if we're being realistic here, I would agree with you, Paul. I mean, I think it's going to take, some people can work at it for a long time and eventually get there, but there are some things on somebody's structure like that you just can't change, like clavicle width and just certain, like those things you just can't change. So,
yeah.
I remember I was talking to I'm not going to name the judge. I was talking to a high level judge a few years back, and we were talking about feedback, right? And he was giving feedback to competitors, like, how do you keep like everybody straight, and how do you constantly give people feedback? And he looked at me and he said two things. He goes, the problem with shows like this, he's like, it's this girl that won the overall at this show thinks she's ready to go to nationals because she won the overall, and she's going to go to nationals and probably get last call outs. He said, and the second part is, I feel like, he's like, sometimes I just want to look at people and say, their feedback is pick different parents.
Yep.
And it's a hard truth, but sometimes you just don't have the genetic structure. I think a lot of times people use genetics as a limiting factor when they don't need to. But there are certain things, like Paul, like you said, if you have very narrow clavicles and a super wide waist, you're probably not going to be a bodybuilder. Right? It's just your structure's not really made for that. And that's fine. You have many other talents. It's just bodybuilding and your God-given
what's funny
skeleton
is people with sometimes that structure are very gifted at powerlifting, right? Because they have a better base. So, that's why there's lots of options of things to do in this world, right? If you're 7 feet tall, yeah, you might not ever be Mr. Olympia, but you might be the center for the Orlando Magic, right? So you can never say that everyone could get a pro card. That's what makes it. That's what makes it exciting. If everyone could do it, no one would want to do it.
That's what makes it special, is the fact that not everyone can do it. And you're a professional athlete in a sport, and people will complain all the time, like, oh, I don't have the genetics for this. It's like, well, I don't have the genetics to be a starting wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Bucks either. Right. And I don't have the genetics to be a center for, for the LA Lakers. I just don't have it. I'm not 7 feet tall. Sometimes we're not built with certain things, and that's okay.
Yep. So, yeah. All right, Lexie, you got one?
Yeah, let's go with, tips for minimizing muscle loss when recovering from surgery. This person says they can't walk for 6 weeks. And I think this would be a good one to talk about. As I don't know about you guys, but I've had some female clients who have gotten like breast augmentations and then they're out of the gym for 4+ weeks and they're always worried about that. So what are your guys' tips for those scenarios and like minimizing muscle loss when the client can't do anything but walk?
Go ahead, Evan.
Well, muscle is not just going to get up and run away from you. That's what people think, number one, is going to happen. I can tell you from personal experience of working with clients and being around people that try to lose muscle, and the effort it takes to actually pull muscle off your body is hard. It's not easy. Keeping your protein intake up at a good degree is going to be good. Making sure you stay on your diet is going to be important. And honestly, keeping a good mental attitude is going to be important for that, because you can't do anything. If you literally can't do anything, you just have to stay positive, keep your food where it needs to be. And as soon as you train, will you feel kind of sloppy? Sure. Muscle, you're going to feel some atrophy coming. I mean, it'll happen, but it doesn't mean it stays forever. 2 weeks back in a jump, you'll be right back where you were.
Yeah, I think this is one thing where like research can kind of help mentally prepare people. So, research shows that if you completely stop training a muscle, like completely don't do anything, lay in a bed for 3 weeks, you have lost zero muscle. Muscle does not begin to atrophy for up to 3 weeks. Also, when you build muscle, you literally change your DNA. So when you come back to the gym, like Evan said, you get right back to where you were in a matter of weeks, like 2 to 3 workouts, and you're going to be right back to where you were. And your joints, your ligaments, your mental acuity are all going to be reset. You're going to be like re-excited and reignited. It's almost a good strategy to plan some time like that. I've talked to quite a few of my friends who have gone through like major injuries, right? Like a tear. And they've all said they wished they would have, before the tear, just taken 3 months off from the gym, just completely stopped going for 3 months, just because of how great they felt after. And I doubt any of us are going to do that, because we're all dealing with the mental hurdle, right, of not going to the gym. But like, yeah, if you get a breast augmentation, A, you're not going to lose any muscle, and B, you're not getting on stage 6 weeks after you get it. So don't worry. That's it.
Yeah, I know that was a big concern. Like back when I got my breast augmentation a few years ago, I was so worried about that. But the science kind of puts your mind at ease. But I also find that a lot of competitors, specifically, like when you can't train for that long, I felt like I looked really just like depleted, which I was. I wasn't, stimulating my muscles every day like I normally would. So I felt like I was losing muscle when really I was like, all right, no, just depleted. I'm not, I look small, but it's still there. So I think that's also something that you kind of have to wrap your brain around. But I can strongly attest to the fact that even taking I wasn't allowed to go to the gym for 4 weeks and lift, and the strength comes back really, really quickly. So I think that just keeping protein high and making sure not to like slash your calories too much either when you're recovering from a surgery. I think a lot of people think you have to do these like leaps and bounds with your calories and cut them like in half because you're not working out, when it's not really the case. You don't need to do any, honestly, you don't need to do much, if anything, with your calories when you're recovering.
Yeah,
And
there is evidence. I mean, you'll see it. If you stop training a muscle for about a week, your body's going to drop all that glycogen storage, because it goes, oh, I don't need to hold on to all this. So there is going to be a decrease in muscle volume. That's not muscle loss. The muscle fibers are still the same. They're just not holding on to A, inflammation, B, water and glycogen. So they do appear smaller, but that comes back right away. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have 2 clients recently that love training, right? They love training and they are very good at it. They're very strong. And they had breast augmentations that were kind of forced out of the gym, for 4 to 5 weeks. And it's the best thing ever happened to them. Right. They look fresh. They look better. They look full. I'm like, you look like you went from looking like an amateur NPC to like a pro just from rest.
So I've got a new strategy post-show with almost all of my competitors. I'm putting them on 4-day routines, and it's really going well, because the added recovery, that extra day, A, their workouts are a little more intense because they're like refreshed and they're not beat up. And B, they just get more time of their life back. Their cardio's down, they're less time in the gym. And so those sessions become kind of improved. And I think same thing happens when you take 4 to 6 weeks off from the gym. You just appreciate it more and you enjoy it more. So,
Definitely. Cool. All right, Evan, you're next.
Oh, you not up, Lexie? Or you just asked, didn't you?
Yeah, that was mine.
All right, here's a good one. Paul, I'm sure you got a few of these. Please describe the most challenging prep you've had to coach through.
I mean, for me, it's always the ones where you just get uncomfortable with the amount of cardio and how low the calories have to go to get someone stage lean. I don't know that I could give a specific example, but I mean, I've definitely had girls doing more than 2 hours of cardio on less than 10 times their body weight in calories. And both of those are like my thresholds, then it comes down to just having multiple conversations. Okay, how bad do you want this? Do we have another option? Like, could we do another show? You know, I literally had one girl that was like, listen, my mom has cancer. She's not going to live long. I want to do this show. What am I going to tell her no? Because it's not healthy? No, not healthy for her would be not doing the show, because she wanted her mom to see her compete before she passed away. So like, I don't place limits on human beings. I do have kind of thresholds on fats and carbs because I think they're essential for the body to function. I really don't have limits on cardio, because what I'll do often with competitors that need to lose a lot of body fat, I'll say, we're going to do 2 hours of cardio, but you're not allowed to sit down. I want you to go to the zoo, go to the mall, go to the store, go to the park. Don't sit down. And that way they're expending calories throughout the day without running themselves into the ground. And maybe their mind is on something else. But yeah, for me, the hardest ones are where you're just like, okay, we're literally doing so much and we're losing a half a pound a week. And it's just like
Yeah.
But honestly, sometimes those are some of the most rewarding preps, because then I get to reverse them and get them to a healthier place. Like Brittany Schulman, who just got Olympia qualified, when she came to me, she was like 30 to 40 pounds over stage weight, eating nothing and doing a ton of cardio to maintain that. Getting her body healthy over the last 2 years has been awesome to see. And I think it makes her appreciate it even more. It's just hard because, I still apologize for like how hard I had to push her at the beginning, our first prep, but those are the tough ones for me.
And I want people to understand kind of what Paul said there too. Like, it took time to get her in a good spot for that. When you're in a position where you're 30, 40 pounds overweight and not eating a lot and doing a lot of calories, you can't just magically flip a switch, get a different plan, and then everything rolls into place. It takes time to get there. I think for me, it's not necessarily a specific instance, but more so that when you have a competitor that really wants to do a show and they're not going to be ready for that show, and you have conversations with them saying, I don't think this is a good idea to do this show. And, it's one of those things, like you said, if someone's hell set on it and I tell them everything there is to know, or everything, at least my opinion on it, that how I think it's going to go, I'm not going to tell them no. I can't tell them no, but it's difficult to kind of watch that train coming down the tracks on them, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's not a fun place to be, no matter how much you try to prepare them for it. And I do my best to do that. And typically at the end of that, they're like, shit, you're right. We probably should have done this a little bit different. And it doesn't happen again, but it's not fun, because we're all competitors. We know how much the sport takes, right? And to step on stage and feel like you're not ready is not a fun place to be.
Nope.
Yeah, 100%. It's hard too with like the first time competitors. As coaches, we can try and push them as much as we can, just like, or, be real with them, like you said, Evan, and say, hey, I don't think we're going to be ready for this show. Trust me. And sometimes if they've never competed before, they don't know that feeling of stepping on stage and being that outlier. They don't know that feeling yet. And so they think, oh, no, I just want to do it anyways for fun. And then they do experience getting on stage and being that outlier in a negative way. And they realize, oh, like, that's not fun. I never want to experience that again.
And it's not even that. It's the fact that, like, hey, I'm ready to push. We'll do whatever I need to do to get in this show. And kind of like Paul said, it's like, you don't want to push people into that, especially because the look's not going to be as good as it can be. And their experience is going to be subpar. All of these things are happening. You see it. And you're like, no, I'm going to be good. I'm going to be good. And almost every time on the backside, it goes exactly the way you think it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
So that's hard. That's always hard.
Agreed. I'd agree with all of that.
All right. Is it my turn now?
Yes, Paul is up.
We're getting through a lot of questions today.
I know. I kind of like this. It's like somewhat rapid fire, but we're still elaborating a decent amount.
I got a couple that were in this vein. How long should you work with a client before prep starts? That's a tough one. I've literally picked up a client in peak week before, because I'm like, wow, if this is your peak week plan, you are effed. Let me set up a peak week plan for you that will allow you to get on stage and look good. I don't really have any hard and fast rules for like how long I need to work with somebody. It all depends on where they're at currently, what their expectation is. And as long as I feel like we're going to be a good fit, for me, I'm not going to adjust my overall philosophy for someone that doesn't really agree. I feel like my resume speaks for itself, and I'm not going to compromise the way I do things because someone wants something from me that I feel is not the best approach for them. I will definitely work with people on, okay, I've definitely had people come to me in peak week that were on a meal plan that I was like, okay, well, obviously I'm not switching you to macros and you've never tracked macros, so I'll help you with your meal plan for peak week. But my overall approach is going to be very specific to every individual. So listen, I would love to work with everybody for a year before their first show with me, but I can almost guarantee you it's going to go better the more time I have with you. In fact, I will guarantee that. But I also feel like there's such subpar coaching out there that I'm okay with helping out and stepping in when I can, even if we're not going to be perfect, but we're just still going to be better than you would have been.
Yep. I've had a lot of those this year. I've picked up, a lot of people on their peak week or leading into the peak week that knew something wasn't right. And they referred to me and I helped them out through the peak week. There's been a lot of other ones I picked up directly after shows and helping them with their reverse. And there's a lot of people I start out right when we start prep. And then there's honestly probably the majority of them I have luckily at least like 6 months before we start a prep. But like, if I could get a year with somebody beforehand, of course I would like that. But that we're talking generalities here. If there's someone that comes in and they're ready and they're in a good spot, we may not need that time, right? We may not need that time, but the more time I can obviously learn the person's body, the better. But then again, there's also the peaking process, right? To learn that person's body, how their body peaks. There's a million different things that you have to learn about somebody during that process with it. So, it's person dependent, but more time is going to be better for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with everything you guys said. I mean, I think it also depends too on the client. Like I've had those instances too where I've overtaken a client in the middle of their prep or right before peak week. And is it ideal? No, but if I can like potentially quote unquote save them from a really bad coaching situation, I'll do it. But I think that like if a client comes to me middle of their prep, but they're a very detail oriented person, they stay on top of everything, they communicate really effectively, it can usually turn out very well. But yeah, in an ideal world, it's nice to be able to work with somebody for at least bare minimum a couple of months before we even think about starting prep.
Actually, I want to piggyback off the question we had before about the hardest situation with coaching someone. I've run into this recently to where I've taken over people's preps either right at the end or during a reverse. That was a very long, abusive prep, especially calorically. And trying to get them through a reverse is very difficult, because they are going to fall off the vast majority of the time,
Well,
and not just fall off once or twice, but a lot.
That's why one of my favorite phrases is, now, if you wait till the show's over to start a reverse diet, you are going to fail. Reverse dieting is like this idealistic time where we're like, hey, we're just going to add 30 carbs and we're going to add 10 fat. False. If your show is over and you haven't brought calories up and dropped cardio going into the show, you are going to be insatiably hunger, have crazy cravings, and you're just going to be in a bad place because you're going to overeat. You're going to feel guilty about it. That's going to create more guilt, make you more overeat. You're probably going to skip the gym some days. Like, so I don't know. The whole idea of reverse dieting, while it's great, I think for a competitor, especially one that's been, put through the ringer, 800 calories, hours and hours of stairs.
Yeah.
If you're waiting till the show is over, I'll honestly sometimes say, let's do another show in 4 weeks and let me reverse you into the show, because at least they have that reason to hit their numbers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a great point. That was a great point. Okay, I have a question. So this person asks, this is for the athlete who is family planning, how to come back to the sport postpartum and kind of how to plan your shows around starting a family. So I know I've dealt with this a couple times. I know you have, Paul, with like, I'm sure you have too, Evan, with ladies that want to start a family or they're coming back postpartum, kind of planning shows around that.
I mean, that's very personal. That's up to the individual. There is no right, wrong. I've had a girl compete 9 months after she had her baby, and she did very well. That was her personal goal. I would never place that expectation on anyone. Yeah, it really comes down. I mean, here's the thing. Don't plan too far ahead. Don't write checks for your body in your mind that you're not going to be prepared to cash in a year from now. Saying you want to compete when you're mid-pregnancy, you're going to be a different person after you have that baby, and that is okay. Don't hold yourself to who you used to be. That's my thing. Don't put it out there too hard. Do what's right for you. Maybe that is competing, but I don't think that's a question we can answer here. without knowing like who the person is and asking. It's so specific.
Yeah, I think a lot of females naturally see these like moms that compete X months or a year postpartum, and they put that pressure on themselves, especially if they were a competitor prior to getting pregnant. But I think, I mean, it's hard to, I mean, I've never been in those shoes. It's hard to say, but I would say don't put any expectations on yourself. Because if you tell yourself, like you said, Paul, mid pregnancy, that you want to get back, you want to start a prep 3 months after giving birth, like you're probably going to be a completely different person, and that timeline may shift. So I don't know. I don't like those harsh timelines. I say just kind of go with the flow and take
How
things.
excited is everybody for Angelica Teixeira to compete at the Arnold this year? Because
Oh,
she had
yeah.
2 babies. Her last show, she got 4th at the Olympia. She's had 2 babies, and her next show is going to be the Arnold. So I messaged Daraja. I'm like, I'm so excited. We get to see Angelica's return at the Arnold. So that'll be probably the first, for sure. I know it's the first ever person to win the Olympia, have kids, and come back to compete as a pro. I'm sure other pros have done it. But I think it'll because Angelica already does such a great job, it'll set such a great example.
I'm excited for that too. Yeah, she was on a podcast. I think it was Jay Cutler's podcast. It's like 2 hours long, and I've been going through it and like listening to it. And yeah, I'm really excited to see that. I mean, I'm sure she's going to do amazing, but I can't even imagine having 2 little kids and prepping. Like, that just seems like a lot.
Can confirm.
Yeah, definitely a lot. And this kind of piggybacks off to what Paul said earlier about what's healthy or what's not healthy for each individual, right? Like the girl he was talking about competing, he's like, it was healthy for that girl to compete in that situation with it. And I think the same thing comes to, females after kids or before kids, planning families around it. Like, what's healthy for them? For some people, it may be competing 9-10 months after you have your child. It may be. For others, it may be never competing again. For some people, maybe it's 2 years later. It's what's healthy for you, your family, and that relationship, because bodybuilding is really cool, but it's a small part of our lives, right? The other part's far more important. So whatever's healthy and whatever can support that part of your life, I think is probably what's recommended.
Yep. Good answer.
I think it's you, Lexie, right?
No, that was
that was hers.
So that's Evan, or is it me?
Yeah. Here's a good one. On the rare occasion, is there any benefit to eating 800 calories at the end of the day just to meet your macro goal? So you haven't planned out your day the best. You have obviously your food allotment for the end of the day. And let's say it's like 10:30 at night and you got to shove let's say as a female to 800 or 1,000 calories. Like, is there ever a benefit to doing that?
Is there ever a benefit? Sure. There's a benefit. I mean, especially if you've only had 500 calories and you're going to be ruined if you don't eat. I mean, you might have some digestive distress depending on what foods you eat. And I think you probably need to plan better for the next day, but I've done it. I've literally looked at my macros and been like, oh my gosh, I'm way behind. I have to change my strategy. That's one thing about being a macro. It's the philosophy of tracking your macros is that you can be flexible. I know some people that they have all their meals planned out, and if they can't have one of those meals they planned, they don't know what to do. They literally don't know how to eat. Whereas I can look and be like, man, I've only had 60 protein today. Okay, I got to get another 120, 180 grams of protein today. All right, let's get to work. You just feel like you got, but yeah. So yeah, the short answer is yes, there is a benefit. You don't want to be catabolic if possible in the building season.
Yeah, I think if that case scenario comes up, if it is poor planning, or let's just say the day gets away from you and it's like, oh crap, I've got 800 calories. I would recommend looking at what you are. Well, if you already have food logged for those 800 calories, look at that. And I would try to make those food sources as low volume as possible. So like if you have 60 grams, let's just say 800 of those calories is from 60 grams of carbs. Like if you had 60 grams of carbs worth of oatmeal and fruit, I may take that out and try to do like cream of rice with honey on top, something that's going to be a lot quicker to digest, or even a little bit of fruit juice or, Gatorade, just because if you're going to eat that close to bedtime, you have to account for the fact that digestion is going to slow because you're going to be laying down all night. So I would just try to have something that's going to be a lot lower in volume and lean on like those simple carbs, things that are going to digest a lot quicker. And if you can, I mean, it's obviously probably going to be late at night and dark, but if you can eat that meal and kind of move a little bit afterwards, like just walk around, get some steps in, that can kind of help to offset some of that like digestion that you could experience overnight.
I think obviously it depends on what phase we're into. If we're in a building phase, yeah, I think it's important to get your food in. If we're in a fat loss phase with it, then and maybe not eat all of that. It kind of just depends. I think as well though, and this is like an offhand thing, right? This isn't something that happens commonly. This is a once in a blue moon sort of thing. I think also kind of the time of day that you train, like say you train early in the morning, then yeah, it's probably more important that you get more of that food in because you're not going to have as much time to back that food up the next day and get in there and get it trained. And also too, it depends where this person's calories are at, right? Let's say they're at 1,800 calories for the day, or they're at 1,700 calories and they have 800 calories at the end. That's going to be a gut bomb to most of those people, right? It's going to be a lot, which could mess their digestion up. It could mess their food up for the next day, which could throw their weight up, which could throw them off. They're like, well, how did I do this? That's why I'm not eating this late at night again. It could cause some mental issues with that too. So it's very person specific, and that's why coaching is person specific. And it's not something that you can just paint with a broad brush because every person is a little bit different on that.
Well, competitors,
I know it's probably a lame answer, but
people aren't robots. And so one of the things I really like to do with my competitors that are not in prep is remind them, hey, listen, here's our tier of priorities. Hit your protein goal, hit your calorie goal. So in a situation like this, if they don't want to eat 800 calories, I'd be like, well, try to get as much of your protein in as you can with a few extra carbs and fats. If you'd rather not eat all that food at once, just at least get the protein in. Because in my mind, that's going to be the most beneficial nutrient for making sure that we're building muscle. And then it's very normal, like normal, people that are not really aware of their nutrition, if they eat less one day, they tend to eat more the next day. And if they eat more one day, they tend to eat less the next day. So there's nothing wrong with the next day just going, you know what, I've got another 150 carbs. I'm going to spread that out over my meals tomorrow. So I don't have to force feed tonight. So yeah, again, flexibility for the win.
mm-hmm.
Yes.
And of course, consistency is going to be the best part with that, right? But we also are not perfect creatures. We also have lives. And I think putting that stress on yourself to try to be perfect every day, unless you are a top level Olympian with it, like there's the stress and the worrying is going to impact you negatively more than missing a little bit.
Oh, I mean, a week out from a show, I'm going to give somebody a tongue lashing for doing that, really.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be problematic. But again, people aren't robots, and very, very few of us have the luxury of like building our whole lives around getting on stage.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. All right, Paul, you're up.
Man, I've got a bunch here, so let me read which one. That's a good one. All right. When and why would you add the stair mail to someone's prep? This is actually from a client of Stevens. I'll let you guys go because I think that's a pretty clear answer.
You can go first, Evan.
I am, again, different for every person, right? I think the stairmaster, I would utilize that more probably in the beginning of prep than towards the end, when food's a little bit higher, because the calorie burn's a little bit easier. You can get more calorie burn with that, with food being a little bit higher. Recovery is better at that point. But when you get towards the end of a prep, the stairmaster is going to be really hard. It's going to create a ton of inflammation, and especially, it all depends how hard we have to push as well with that. If we have to get somebody ready, we have to peel like 5 pounds off and we got a week to do it, then guess what? Stairmaster is probably going to be part of that, because the juice you get out of that squeeze is a lot. You're going to get the most bang for your buck out of it. But once the goal should be to do that prior to like something like peak week, and then pull it out and let inflammation go down, recovery go up, food go back up. I think it has its place. For sure. It's a tool, just like anything is a tool, just like walking is a tool, just like steps are a tool, just like calories are a tool. Everything is a tool. I think it's a tool that people use too much at times, but I do think it can be beneficial.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if you're looking for, what did you say, more juice to squeeze from the lemon or whatever, I think it is good to implement. I think it definitely depends on the client though, and how well they are recovering at that point in prep. So I've like had a few clients where their legs, they expressed to me like, my legs feel really, really heavy, and we notice that they're holding on to inflammation. In that case, I would likely not elicit the stairmaster. One thing I've started doing with a lot of my clients when they're deep into prep is, rather than like changing up the modality, because I think we all know if you do, incline walking for your cardio the whole entire prep, naturally your body's going to become more efficient at it. You're going to start start to burn a little bit less. It's harder to get your heart rate up towards the end of prep. So I'll give a lot of my clients at the end of prep like a calorie goal instead of, oh, okay, you're going to do cardio for this amount of times for this duration. That way, we don't have to worry as much about the modality. They get to choose the modality that they recover best from, and we're keeping the calorie burn consistent. So that's an approach I've done more so recently that seems to work a lot better than what I was doing before.
Yeah, so I'll explain the stairs the way I use it as like as a tier. So first things first, can we lose weight just on our job and daily activity? Great. No? Okay, now do we need to add a step count? Does that work? Cool. Does it? Not? Okay, now we need to add perhaps an incline walk, right? Because it's a little more intense than just walking outside or getting steps. When I'll start to add a stair mill is I like to use it early in the morning because competitors tend to have more energy. So like a first thing, wake up and do a stair mill session, come home, eat, train middle of the day. Worst case scenario, if we're doing bookended like AM and PM stairs, I'm going to probably bring down the training volume, frequency, or intensity to kind of offset that. That's when basically fat loss is more important than muscle building or retention, or we just need to be leaner. So it's basically a tier system. The stairs for me is the most intense form of cardio that I will have someone do. I'm not going to have them do HIIT, especially near a show. Stairs, listen, if you have never been on the stairs, you're done after 5 minutes. It is grueling. The concern is when you get used to doing 2 hours of stairs a day and someone comes to me, they can't even break a sweat doing 2 hours of stairs. We got problems, right? So this is when you got to take like a thermogenic, wear a sweatsuit just to break a sweat in prep. And to me, when people say like, how intense should your cardio be? When I know my body temperature goes up, that's how intense it should be. Like if I'm doing cardio for the purposes of losing body fat, I want to be at least breaking a light sweat throughout the cardio session. I don't need to be pouring sweat, but on the stairs, you're probably going to be if you haven't done it before. So yeah, that's when I use it.
And Lexi, kind of what you were talking about with the calorie burn, that's something that I do a lot with. Well, it depends, right? Like clients that do well on that, I probably have half of them on a calorie burn towards the end. And the more experienced the competitor is, the more they understand their body, they're good with recovering. But the newer the competitor is, I have to say, hey, we got a calorie goal here, but let's maybe not do the stairmaster for this whole calorie goal because they want to get it done as quick as they can get it done. They don't understand the recovery part of it. They just think it's harder, it's going to burn more calories, and that's what I need to do. And they don't think about the recovery part of it. So I like using the calorie burn, but sometimes I have to say the modality in which it's done, depending on the client, especially, and that tends to be more with the hardcore female side. The guy, if you tell him, hey, you don't have to do the stairmaster, you can say, okay, sure, great, I ain't gonna do that shit. If it's a girl that's got that little grind in them, and you tell them to get off the stairs, you might as well tell them to just cut off their left leg, right? Like you would have thought you have just told them the worst thing ever. So I am a big fan of the calorie burn though, but before I'll do that, I make sure to track everything and make sure that their data is correct, right? That the numbers line up.
I always will preface, I always make sure that they have a way to accurately track their calorie burn too, because
Has to be a wearable.
machine calorie burn is not valid at all.
No.
I mean, like, how does it know anything about you to know what you're burning? So I always have to make sure of that before I give a client a calorie burn. Okay, so I have a quick question. So this person asks, in your guys' coaching experience, if a client is struggling to adhere because of a certain like sweet or a certain food, do you see more success removing that for them, or telling them not to eat it, or including it like daily? So do you guys get what that's asking? So
Yeah, it's a trigger food.
yeah, somebody's dealing with a trigger food, do you find more success telling them, okay, don't have it at all, or more success with telling them to have it, like, I guess, that repeated exposure day after day?
I say pull it out.
Get it
That's
out of
what
there.
I do with most people. Get it out.
Honestly, cravings are like, I would say 90% environmental. Like we've all experienced at the end of prep, we're like, my almonds are amazing, I love bananas. And then you have that first bite of like real like tiramisu or an actual steak or French fries that are seasoned properly. And you're like, holy crap, what have I been lying to myself about? So your taste buds and your senses will adapt to a more bland diet if you stick to it. So yeah, get that crap out of there. Why would you want to tempt yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, I think to myself, out of sight, out of mind. Like I know that post show for me in particular, I will not keep any like fun foods in my apartment after the show. Like I'll have enough to get me through the night after the show or whatever I want to enjoy. But if I keep like my freezer stashed with things or my pantry stashed with things, it's like all I'll think about, right? And I believe like I just get it out of sight for me because out of sight, out of mind. And then once it's out of sight, I'm not thinking about it. I'm not even craving it. So that works. That's what works best for me, at least.
Yep.
If you got to get in the car and go drive to go get it, the likelihood of you doing it is much less.
I
And
ate
then if you do it,
I ate a lot of candy corn in October, not because I wanted it, because it was right there on the counter and I just kept grabbing handfuls and handfuls. Yeah.
yep.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. I know. That's why I always recommend go to this, like do your grocery shopping. Right. I mean, I'm sure we've all heard this. Do your grocery
Yeah.
shopping after you eat a meal, or go do your grocery shopping like after you do your cardio or go to the gym and you feel really good because you're probably going to make a lot better decisions and you're not going to have as many like impulse buys of like, oh, this looks good. Let me try this. Like you're just going to stick with your plan and not deviate from it.
I like to go to the grocery store right after leg day when I haven't eaten in 4 hours. That's the best time.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Everything looks amazing.
I see. It's funny
And
because
I
like
go right into Publix and go to the right to the bakery, just walk through there. That's no
Ugh.
tempt.
it's funny because like I actually do whenever my time to go to the grocery store is usually right after I go to the gym, but it always works out really well for me because I always feel like after I do cardio or I train, I just always feel like, oh, I feel a lot more just like, I don't know, motivated, so to say. So when I go
Yeah.
to the store, I just make a lot better of decisions. But I mean, it's convenient that I can walk to Publix from my gym. So yeah.
All right, let's do
Yeah,
a
I
couple
got one
more.
downstairs. It's
Oh, that's
dangerous.
right. You have one in your basement.
Dangerous. I
All right.
got one that's pretty general, but I think it's a good one. What does it take to be successful in bikini? I know it's
What?
very general here, but do we have a couple key points, like things we look for?
Um, I mean, something I really like to see is I think mindset is a big part of it. Because if you have a negative mindset, like you're gonna be just turned off from the sport really quickly and it's gonna be very short-lived. But I also really like to see, and I see a lot of success with like competitors who they are always a student of the sport. Like they go to shows or they watch live streams or they're asking questions and they always like to learn. I feel like there's a direct correlation with that and like how successful or at least how prepared they are getting onto stage.
I mean, it's such a
I
loaded
think,
question. What does it take
yeah,
to be successful as far as muscle, as far as mindset, as far like, you can take that anywhere. So yeah, I don't really know how to answer it because I don't know the.
yeah. And define success, because that's different to every person, right? Is it just
There
getting
you
on
go.
stage and looking good, or is it winning a pro card or winning Olympia?
Listen,
Like
I
it's
have
just
some
on stage.
girls. Yeah, success for them is if they could ever just get top 5 at a show.
Mhm.
Some girls want to win the Olympia, and they both are right that should be their target. So, yeah, man, I don't know. It's just I want to know what that person's struggling with. I think there are
Yeah.
certain individuals who just have a look, a mindset, and it just clicks for them. Obviously Daraja, Ariana come to mind. Um, the commonalities that I'll say between those two that I just spoke about, they put on muscle extremely easily. And I don't mean it to say that they don't work hard, but I mean, you know, I don't I have to be careful how much they train. They put on muscle easily. They don't place any expectations on themselves. They really do the sport because they love it. They happen to excel at the sport. I know Daraj has struggled a little bit with expectations. Ariana hasn't yet, but I'm sure that's coming. But they both handle ups and downs of the sport very well. They also both, get this, having a wonderful life completely away from the sport. That's something that I've really started to notice a commonality between my successful competitors is that the sport does not define them, is an expression of what they love to do, going to the gym and working hard, and they get on stage. But win or lose, when the show's over, they're like, cool, I got this whole other world going on. I think a lot of girls are really caught up in their placings, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's a slippery slope. So those are
Yeah.
my commonalities.
Percent agreed. And I think a big, just universal trait we can apply to, I mean, success in life in general, but again, like towards this question, towards competing, would just be consistency. And I mean, I know that's a very generalized thing too, but consistency, falling in love with the process, not just being uber focused on like stage day and the destination, and just falling in love too with like the monotony of your routine and of that consistency.
100%.
Yeah, I think for someone that's goal is like on a more achievable, like just getting on stage, placing top five, something like that. I think mindset and consistency are going to be the two most important things with that. And I think for someone that has bigger goals with it, obviously the mindset, their bone structure, the ability to put on muscle, and their, I think low anxiety is a good way to put it. I think people that can kind of go with the flow a little bit and not get stressed out over every little thing is helpful, because there's a lot of really genetically blessed people out there. I know we all know them that don't have it right up here, right?
Oh my
And
gosh.
that is one of the most frustrating things in the world as a coach, to be like, do you see the trajectory that's here in front of you? It's all right here.
Yep.
And then they just can't get it together
Yep.
up top. And that's a very, very painful thing to see.
I've had a
Especially
few
for,
clients that I'm like, man, you could literally win the Olympia and you can't even get through a day.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. And I think a commonality that runs deep with a lot of those people is very high anxiety. I've noticed that it's they're very high strung.
yeah.
Everything gets under their skin. They worry. It's not just in this sport, it's through all aspects of their life, right?
Right.
So that piggybacks on what you said, Paul, about having like a good, happy structure, not structure, but a good, happy life outside of the sport really translates well when you decide to do the sport.
Yeah. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say, doesn't Sandy Williamson, like, she's kind of known for always preaching that too, about how like bodybuilding shouldn't be your entire life. I mean, it's a part of your life, but you should have, other stuff outside of that. I think I've heard her say that before. So
She
good.
never said it to Ashley Kay, but but that's the thing. That's Ashley Kay is built different. She's happy
Exactly.
competing. That's her
She loves
happiness.
it.
Right. So like, don't hold yourself to anyone else's standards. Some girls, they go do a couple preps, they do a couple shows, and that was their fitness journey. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some girls are meant to compete for 10, 15, 20, maybe longer, like I liked what Ashley said, at this point, nobody has aged out of the Olympia. The girls that were winning the Olympia 10, 12 years ago are still able to compete if they choose to do so and be competitive. So the bikini division offers now, they have the Masters Olympia every 2 years. They have the Masters Pro shows every weekend. There's opportunity for bodybuilders to compete for a long period of time if that's how you want to do it. So yeah, it just depends on, your love for the sport. And someday I'll write a book about prep, and it will definitely include like the traits of successful people, because the longer I do this, the more I get to be around these high level athletes, the more I'm just starting to notice, the green flags, as you want to call them. Like, you meet someone and you go, oh man, this is going to go real well. I can see everything is in place.
Maybe we could, I think maybe we've done this before. I was going to say we could even maybe do a podcast episode of, I don't know, just like client green flags, or just
Yeah.
talk
Could be a
our
great
most.
one.
Well, we tend to focus the red flags because I think it gets a lot of attention, but I would love to do let's just focus on just the positives. What are some traits you see of just people that are successful? And like Evan said, successful doesn't mean you win the Olympia. Successful could mean you were able to lose 80 pounds, get on stage and check something off your bucket list, and you come out of that in a good place. Like, yeah. So, yep.
Yep. Do you want to do one more, Paul, from
All
yours?
right, one more. We'll wrap it up with this one. Maybe this will be a good topic starter. Kind of goes in line with that one. So it's either what does prep for prep look like, or what is the most optimal attitude when thinking about an ideal prep?
I
I
think the most, go ahead, Lexi.
Were you gonna say the optimal attitude?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
going to say, I think the most optimal attitude going into a prep is knowing that the prep's probably not going to go smooth, and know you're going to have roadblocks, and know that's going to be okay, and know to be present throughout it all and not get too high and not get too low.
Yeah, I was
Just
gonna
take
say
each day as it comes.
all of that and then go into it without any expectations. I think too oftentimes, I mean, I've been guilty of it before. You go into a prep, you have these expectations for yourself, or you have this like timeline in your brain of like, okay, I want to do this show, I want to do this. And then, if life throws you a curveball or something happens and then you have to deviate from that, it gets kind of like you kind of panic. So I think if you can go into the prep without any clear expectations, or it just lessens the pressure and the stress you're going to put on yourself.
Yeah, I love the idea of having multiple options. It's probably my favorite approach to prep. But at this point, I'm coaching mostly girls that are either pro or national level competitors. And so the nice thing about that is, okay, we're going to always do a warm-up show before a national show. I never like to go into nationals as the first show of the season. So we're going to be ready a little bit early. We can also call an audible. Okay, we're not quite where we want to be. Let's not get on stage. I'll use Brittany Schulman as a perfect example. She was supposed to do Hurricane couple weeks before her show at Ben Weider. I didn't feel it was worth her time. I said, listen, Brittany, we need to be a couple pounds leaner before Ben Weider. I already know who's doing Hurricane. You're not beating them. Let's use the time wisely and not do the show. Worked out perfect. She did one show this year, won it. So like that comes with experience, also knowing your competitors. So yeah, the mindset of prep needs to be like, this is I always say like, let's is our window. I'll definitely say like, okay, we're going to shoot for this show, or this show, whichever one we're ready for. If we're ready early, cool, we'll do that. And then we can just jump to the national show. So yeah, I think the right mindset is get on stage when the body is ready, not when you determined you were going to get on stage.
Yes.
Absolutely. And you always hear too, like you'll hear from athletes all the time that, when they win shows, you ask them, okay, well, what changed? What was your mindset going into it? And a lot of times you'll hear people say, I just went into it without any expectations. And like, I feel like that's always a good thing when, like, especially on a peak week when an athlete is just super calm and they're going in with no expectations, it usually yields a really good result.
I literally had girls place within one spot of each other at nationals. One was through the moon happy. The other was bawling her eyes out. They placed side by side. So it was all about the expectation that they had placed on themselves. The one girl was just happy to be in first callouts. The other girl was sad she didn't turn pro. And it was like expectations. You can't, if you've missed your pro card or if you've been really close, you're going to have an expectation. That's just natural. But to really be able to enjoy it, win, lose, or draw, that's when you reach that next level of competing. I'm there now. Obviously, I don't have high expectations for myself when I compete because I'm just doing it for the fun of it. Now, I will say this. I still want to freaking win. I'm still going to put in the work to win. And, when I did my show this year, I remember backstage when they started calling out placings, I was like, damn it, I want to win. So when they said second and then I won, I was like, cool, like I won. But literally until that moment, it really kind of was meaningless. And had I gotten second or fifth, it wouldn't have mattered so much. But I have never had so much fun competing as I've had in the last couple of years. And I sometimes wonder if competitors mean it when they say that, but I've seen some competitors really, truly, like Ashley Kay, like she shows up and has fun and she wins a lot of shows, but there's a lot of shows she doesn't win and she still looks like she's having fun. And I think that's that next level of competing.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely. Well, I think this was a good one. And I think we have a topic idea too, to do the green flags of like successful clients and athletes. I think that'd be a fun one to do.
Yeah. Success leaves clues. We'll call it something like that. We can talk about,
yeah, I like that.
Maybe some case studies of clients that we've seen and what's allowed them to be successful. Obviously delayed gratification, happiness outside the sport. Choose your parents very carefully.
Yep.
Yeah, just make sure you pick right on that one.
Yeah, I met Ariana's mother at the Olympia for the first time. And she walks up and she's like, I just want to say thank you for everything. And I was like, I just want to say thank you, like, for making that. Like,
that's so cute. Her mom was super sweet at the Olympia. I remember.
Yeah. Yeah, she was soaking it all up. But yeah, that's, like, hey.
And guys, I want to say how crazy this was after we put up that podcast, about the coaching red flags, the amount of messages I got from people saying, this is my coach, or these are my coaches prior. I was floored at that. because like everything that we said, I couldn't possibly imagine like either being with a coach or ever doing as a coach. And it's just crazy to me how many messages I got saying this is the experiences that I've had.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I think that's why it's good that we put this type of information out there. It needs to be said over and over. And because, I heard somebody the other day talk about idiots are the most confident people. Like the terrible people in the world are the loudest. So like for us, sometimes it's, I don't always want to make a podcast about this kind of stuff, but it's important.
yeah,
Yep.
agreed. Well,
Cool. All right. So I'm glad we talked about Command the Stage. We don't have to worry about it now.
well, and we have a ad now at the beginning, so there's a little blurb at the beginning telling people how they can sign up and all of that. So,
Absolutely. And I think I'm not going to see any of you guys at Nationals. I'm going
um,
solo this year.
well, hopefully we have some good news next week, and I'm sure we will, or next.
Oh
It's
gosh.
it's
This is
gonna
my
go it's
biggest,
gonna go well.
I have 13. This is my biggest national show of the year for open bikini. I don't know if that's typically what I notice is whatever my trend is, that's the trend of the show, right? So if I have a bunch of competitors, there's not many. I mean, there's a bunch. And if I don't have many, there's not many. But however, last year, I only went to NPC Nationals with 2, and it was a massive show for bikini. So I don't know if maybe I'm just bringing a big group and it's going to be small for bikini. There was over 100 girls at the Battle of Texas in bikini alone last weekend. Now, I'm so confused, and I'm going to talk to Freddie about this. He's the promoter, Freddie and Sheila. They only did 6 classes for bikini at a national qualifier a week before nationals. So they basically, 4 girls did not qualify for nationals that could have because it's only top 2 in each class. So I just don't know why they did that. My girl,
When they're like 40
Christina,
in one class.
There was like 27 in Class C, I think.
class C had 27 girls. I was a little stressed because I had 2 of them. They finished 1-2, but I was like literally like, can you try to get in a different class? And they were like, no, they're only doing 6. They're like an inch apart and they got in the same class. So I'm going to try to get one of them into a different height class at nationals because they're adding 2 height classes. So it's an inch difference, not an inch and a half difference.
Yeah. I have to say though, like our bikini girls lucked out because that was nice how they reversed the schedule.
And I don't know why they did that. That was awesome. So Evan, at prejudging, bikini went last. At finals, they went first.
Wow.
Never seen that before. Obviously, like at the Atlantic Coast Pro, the pro bikini goes last, pro bikini goes first, but this was NPC.
Yeah.
So I was like, I've actually got a call scheduled with the head judge here in a minute. I'm going to ask her why they did that. I'm going to be like, that was so cool. And I got a feeling it's because in Texas, bodybuilding rules.
Yep.
Bikini is still an afterthought. And I hate to say that, but bro, the men in Texas
they were good.
The men in Texas are legit. They are men. The amateurs look like pros there.
They did.
So like, I think they did it because they wanted to end with the open bodybuilders and the classic physique guys, kind of like the Olympia. They don't end with bikini.
When I saw those photos come out of the bodybuilding and classic physique for that show, I was like, is this a pro-am?
Bro,
like who are these guys? Like everyone was huge and peeled to the bone.
So last year, Daraja did this show the week before the Olympia. So I went out there and they had pro bikini go on for finals before the men. So they had the men's physique NPC lined up, right? To go right after pro bikini. And I was backstage and I was like, hey, Freddie, why are the men's physique pros already lined up? And he's like, those are the amateurs. And I was like, what? Yeah. I couldn't believe it. The men in Texas bring the heat. So this nationals is going to be no joke. No joke.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious to see how it's different this year. Nationals is now that it's in Texas, or if it is different.
It's going to be, I promise you, Saturday is going to be bigger than Friday. Friday is all the women's divisions. I got a sneaking suspicion bikini is going to be small. I just don't think a lot of girls are aiming for this show. It's late in the year. I don't know.
Be confident.
You gotta
be confident for it.
Well, listen, I'm bringing all my girls are fire right now. So I'm like super confident because I've just, seen a lot of the bikini shows, the NPC shows the last couple of weeks. And I've just been like, there's like maybe one girl at each show that I'm like, yeah, they can go to nationals. And that's it. So I'll be curious to see if it's also a bunch of girls that kind of shut it down early in the year and they're just coming out for nationals. you know, it's going to be very interesting to see what it looks like. So
Yeah.
we are doing the bikini booth, so swing by if you, well, this will be out after nationals. So
Yeah, a little late for that, but
I do got to give a shout out to Christina, who won the class C and the overall, both novice and open. It's always nice going into a national show when you win an overall at a big show like that. You know, she didn't have a lot of confidence going into that show. I think you guys might have met her at the seminar in Dallas.
I told you that story about how I remembered her, Paul. I was standing, she was watching, she was taking a picture, and I was like, who is that girl? That is a crazy build. And she turned around, she's like, oh, hey, I haven't listened to you on the podcast. I work with Paul. I'm like, of course you do.
Yeah, I think everyone that sees her in person kind of freaks out a little bit. She's just got a crazy structure. She's very pretty, a lot of muscle. But she previously did a prep under someone else, and I guess was told like, oh, you're going to go dominate, and she didn't even place. And so she has like a little bit of a, and I might be misquoting that, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I think she just didn't have a lot of confidence going into this show. So I was quite confident that she would do well.
Yeah.
I was quite annoyed that her and Tiffany were in the same class, because I'm pretty sure they were the best two competitors at the whole show. So either one of them potentially would have won the overall, but I'll find out today. But they'll both be at nationals, and they're both going to be a handful. So yeah,
well,
it's going to be good.
So, all right, guys. Well, let's rock and roll another episode. Green flags coming at you soon.
yes. All right, bye guys.
Talk
See
to
ya.
you soon.